The movie opens with British scholar Alithia traveling to Istanbul, where she will give a conference about the connection between sciences and myths. Upon arriving at the airport, a strange-looking glowing man that no one else seems to notice attempts to guide her luggage cart towards what he calls mystery. However, when Alithia's colleagues appear, the little man scurries away. Alithia tells her friends about the strange encounter, to which they jokingly reply that she must have seen a jinn. As the conference continued, Alithia noticed a strange, glowing man in the audience that nobody else seemed to be able to see. When she started talking about how the old gods had evolved into what we now know as science, and old myths only served as metaphors, the weird man became agitated and yelled that it was rubbish. He then jumped onto her, making her pass out. She wakes up only minutes later to a round of applause from the audience. Her colleagues help her back to her room, expressing worry, yet Alithia assures them she feels fine. After the conference ends, Alithia goes downtown to visit antique shops, and in one of them, finds a curious little blue bottle and decides to buy it, instead of anything more expensive. The next morning, Alithia washes the bottle and manages to open it, releasing a djinn that takes up most of the room space. After attempting different languages, she discovers the djinn speaks Greek. He explains that she should not be afraid, as he is now beholden to her and will grant her 3 wishes. However, she is warned that she can't ask for more wishes, eternal life, or for the end of all suffering. While he talks, Jin touches all the things around the room, turning on the TV and quickly getting to learn English through its transmissions. Alithia is taken aback by Jin's request for her wishes, and needs some time to think about it. She then opens up to him, sharing a part of her story she's never told anyone before. As a kid studying in an all-girls boarding school, Alithia was already quite solitary. But then, a mysterious supernatural boy began visiting her, and keeping her company when she was having a hard time, speaking to her in a language only the 2 of them understood. Wanting to remember what he shared with her, Alithia started writing everything down, but the more she tried to bring realism into it, the sillier she began to feel. After a while, she finally made the difficult decision to burn all of the letters the boy had sent her in the school furnace. She knew that it was the only way to move on. From that day forward, she never saw the boy again. The conversation between Alithia and Jin was interrupted by the arrival of Alithia's breakfast. Although she was hesitant to open the door, Jin disappeared before Alithia had the chance. After putting up the "Don't Disturb" sign on the doorknob, Alithia was surprised to find Jin in his much smaller form and a much more extravagant breakfast. To buy some time until she had to decide on a wish, Alithia asked Jin how he ended up inside her bottle. It explained that this was his 3rd incarceration, as he often fell for conversations with women. It all began when Jin found himself in a relationship with his cousin Sheba, the queen of the land who was half Jin and had a thick glade of black hair on her legs. Despite being her plaything and her confidant, Jin still felt free and was allowed to come and go as he pleased. He harbored a dream of one day becoming Sheba's husband, but this dream seemed to be slipping away with the arrival of King Solomon. Jin warned his cousin against the king, but his words fell on deaf ears as Sheba succumbed to Solomon's charms. Eventually, she even removed her leg hair with wax in preparation for the wedding night. Unfortunately, his warnings were in vain and Sheba and King Solomon were wedding. However, Solomon could sense Sheba's connection to Jin, and he used his magic skills to imprison him inside a brass bottle. He then tossed it to a bird, who dropped it in the middle of the Red Sea. Since Jin don't sleep for the first 100 years, he was enraged by his fate, and he prayed to every god under the sun for freedom. Ultimately, Jin tricked himself and prayed to remain in the bottle, hoping that pretending to yearn for nothing would get rid of his pain. Unfortunately, for Jin's, not having wants is the closest thing to death. Alithia explains that she is successful and has everything she needs, even if she doesn't have any children, parents, or siblings. She used to be married to a man she met at school, but after she had a miscarriage, their relationship fell apart and they got a divorce. Now, they are back on the topic of what Alithia's heart desires. Alithia still has a few of her husband's things in a box in her house, even though he moved out with a new lover long ago. Her husband had told her that she was incapable of reading feelings, something she agrees with. This is because her brain is wired differently, making her intelligent but somewhat isolated. She finds solace in stories, as she can find feelings within them. Despite this, Alithia doesn't want her husband back. She got liberated when she got divorced, but as a storyteller, she knows of the cautionary tales and often unhappy endings that accompany Jin's wishes. Jin insists he is honorable, but Alithia is skeptical and wonders if no wishes can be made at all. This causes Jin great distress, affirming that wishes must be made to avoid painful consequences. To drive his point home, Jin tells Alithia the story of his second incarceration. Two fishermen discovered the bottle inside a fish, but because of its hard outer layer, they thought it was a rock and discarded it. The bottle changed hands many times until it became part of a wall, where Gulton found it while attempting to climb and spy on Prince Mustafa. Gulton, a slave of the palace's courtyard, fainted when she opened the bottle and found Jin. Upon awakening, she knew exactly what to wish for, to become one of Mustafa's concubines. Her wish was granted, and she was able to relish her new life, after hiding the bottle under a heavy floor tile in a secret bathroom. While waiting for his other two wishes to come true, Jin explored the area and gained an understanding of the human race. It was during his travels that he noticed Hurrem, the Sultan's favorite slave. As a master manipulator, Hurrem had ambitions of protecting the throne for her own sons, instead of Mustafa. This prompted Jin to worry about Gulton falling victim to a terrible political scheme, and he attempted to warn her. But Gulton refused to listen, and instead wished to become pregnant with Mustafa's baby. As the Sultan's warriors feared their leader becoming too lenient in his position, they plotted to overthrow him, which Hurrem heard about and used this as a way to convince the Sultan that Mustafa was the one trying to take the throne from his father, leading to a difficult decision. Throughout all this, Gulton was making no effort to stay hidden, and instead proudly displayed her swollen belly around the palace, certain that she was carrying the future prince. The Sultan heard about Mustafa, and without asking him about his loyalties, called him to his tent and killed him. Upon learning this, Jin went to warn Gulton that the assassins would come for her next, and asked for the third wish. Unfortunately, Gulton didn't believe him and ran away, straight into the hands of the assassins. Jin tried to help her, but one of the assassins was a follower of Iblis, and had the power to block him. Gulton was thrown into the sea, and while Jin jumped to rescue her, it was already too late. The third wish was unperformed, and as a result, Jin was unable to go to the realm of the Jinn until he could find another master to perform the wish. Alithia finds the story of Jin and Gulton ironic, because it serves as a perfect example of why she has been warning people of the consequences of making wishes. Jin explains that he was forced to wander invisibly for 100 years after Gulton's death, because no one was able to find the secret bathroom in his bottle. Miraculously, two princes, Murad and Ibrahim, were able to sense his presence and were on the verge of discovering his bottle when they were interrupted by their mother Kosum. Jin followed Murad around, hoping to get his attention, but Murad's life was quickly taken over by politics. While Murad was away leading armies on the battlefield, Kosum locked Ibrahim up in a room with many women in the hopes of producing a male heir to protect the family's place on the throne. Ibrahim enjoyed the idea of being surrounded by beautiful women, and so he chose voluptuous and immense individuals, believing that the more flesh, the bigger the pleasure. Upon his return from war, Murad's soul was filled with trauma and guilt, and he thought of murdering Ibrahim in order to prevent any potential competition. Kosum was quick to intervene, however, pointing out Ibrahim's lazy nature and lack of potential to plan a riot. In order to keep Ibrahim, Kosum kept Murad drunk at all times and hired storytellers to distract him. Although Murad would often kill the storytellers if they didn't escape fast enough, one day an old man managed to charm Murad with his tales and became his only friend. When the old man died, Murad was overcome with grief and turned to alcohol to cope. Jin saw this as an opportunity to finally get Murad's attention, but unfortunately, Murad was too weak to open the door of the secret bathroom that he had previously found. He drank until he passed out, leaving Jin all alone once again. Alithia could relate to Jin's feelings of loneliness, as she too had felt the same way. After Murad's death, Ibrahim was forced to take his place as the ruler of Damascus and appointed his favorite concubine, Sugarlump, as the new governor. With her newfound power, Sugarlump was able to explore the palace freely and eventually stumbled upon the hidden bathroom. When she fell on the floor, her size broke the tiles and she found Jin's bottle. Jin asked for a wish, but Sugarlump was wary of him because of his bad odor and kept refusing. Alithia had heard the story of Sugarlump, wishing Jin back into the bottle at the bottom of the Bosphorus, and saw it as an example of why wishing is a bad idea. She thought she could give Jin to someone more open to the idea, but he refused to get back in the bottle. In a fit of frustration, she made 3 quick wishes, which were all silly things, like wishing for a sip of her tea, and therefore didn't work since the wishes needed to be a heart's desire. This led to an argument, where Jin accused Alithia of being a coward, and Alithia wondering if she should wish they had never met. Jin's cries fill the room as his bottle breaks, and a sudden force causes the electronics to malfunction for a few seconds. Alethea guesses this has happened before, and Jin proceeds to tell the third and final story. Zafar was a foundling, married at 12 to a wealthy merchant, much older than her. Despite the wealth, she was treated poorly by the merchant's other two wives, and felt that everyone in the house, including the servants, was mocking her. One day, the merchant gave her a bottle as a gift, which he had seen fall from a fish that the cook was opening. After she satisfied her husband, Zafar managed to open the bottle, releasing Jin. Noticing how bright she was, Jin decided to share his story with her, prompting Zafar to share in return all the things she had built in her free time. Unfortunately, Zafar was not taken seriously because she was a woman, and the judgment she received made her feel as though her power was being left unused. Her first wish was to ask for knowledge, and Jin was more than happy to provide, giving her piles and piles of books. To keep her husband from finding out, they put the books inside magic bottles. Jin spent all his time with Zafar, teaching her all the sciences and languages she desired, and they soon fell in love. As Zafar blossomed with her newfound knowledge, she began to lose her shyness, and she started to rebel against her husband. Unfortunately, Jin's feelings for Zafar were an obsession, so as she was forced to marry her husband, Jin would leave the room and roam the skies to gather new stories to share with her upon his return. Her second wish granted her the ability to perceive the world as Jinns do, which helped her answer a difficult mathematical equation, and also made her pregnant with Jin's baby. He was overjoyed, but refused to leave for the realm of Jin anymore, leading Zafar to believe he was trapping her. Whenever a new argument began, Jin would retreat inside a bottle to calm her down, but eventually she couldn't take it anymore and wished to forget she ever met him. The magic worked, and Jin was once again stuck inside the bottle. After hearing the story, Alethea finally knew what to ask for. She wanted Jin to love her in return, so that their solitudes could be together. Jin accepted, and they spent a lovely night together. But the next day, Alethea had to go back to London. Before leaving, she offered Jin a new bottle so he could travel with her. However, at the airport, when Alethea tried to keep the bottle in her pocket, it was detected by the scanner, and security made her put it on the tray. She was terrified that the scanner or conveyor belt would break the glass, but thankfully the bottle survived the inspection. Once they arrived in London, Jin had to get used to the city and all the noise and electric waves in the air. Despite the culture shock, they eventually found peace and contentment together. Whenever Alethea had to work, Jin would take the chance to sneak around and watch humanity's latest inventions, such as advanced surgery techniques and the collider. One afternoon, Alethea came home from work to find Jin sleeping in the basement, something he wasn't supposed to do. His body was slowly turning to ash due to the city's effect on him, so Alethea used her second wish to make him speak again. This allowed the two to have an important conversation, and Alethea realized that she should not have forced love between them. With this newfound understanding, she decided it was finally time to set Jin free. She opened the bottle, and Jin returned to his original realm, while Alethea fell asleep, content in her decision. The next morning, Alethea put the few things Jin had given her inside a box and put it away, next to her husband's. 3 years passed, and Alethea had finished writing and illustrating a book of all of Jin's stories. Suddenly, Alethea was surprised to see Jin show up in front of her. He had recovered from his illness and was now able to visit her from time to time, helping her to ease her loneliness in a much more natural way. So what did you think of this movie? Leave your thoughts in the comments section below, and if you enjoyed the film, please like and share it. See you next time if you subscribe for more movie recaps.